Hello everyone, a very good morning. We represent the SED cohort of 23-25, and today we have with us Kamanya from New Delhi and Irandi from Mexico, and myself Harshit from New Delhi again. This presentation is a collective effort of a batch of 17 with experiences and learnings from all around the globe to reflect on the potential of climate adaptive architecture in the future. Looking back at the Climate Matters week so far, there have been some critical observations and discussions about the way forward in this period of climate emergency. We at the Sustainable Environmental Design Studio believe in an evidence-based approach to design with the climate and not against it. Referring to the IPCC Interactive Atlas, comparing the global temperature rise till date to 2050, we find that if no action is taken to mitigate climate change so far, Earth's mean temperature will rise by at least 3 degrees in the next 30 years. And this brings us to the question, how well have we understood the climate change in our cities? We studied the predicted hottest temperatures in 2050 for 9 cities around the world to evaluate their built environment's response, need, and readiness to adapt to these changing scenarios. As we look at the temperatures for these cities, patterns starts to emerge. The predicted climate for most cities in the temperate zone start mimicking the historic climatic conditions of their counterparts from relatively lower altitudes. Let's look at some of these closely by understanding the annual mean and peak temperatures. As the climate becomes hotter, evidences show that the temperate regions are facing the impact of climate change at a much advanced rate as compared to the tropical belt.
In regard to global warming issue, we compare two cities which are London and Barcelona to examine how their climate will change in the future. It occurred that temperature-wise London will become the Barcelona in next 30 years. As we can see from the chart, the precedent summer temperature in London in 2050, red line, compared to the temperature in 2010, green line, London is becoming hotter. And the temperature has an increasing tendency to turn into a climate similar to Barcelona, blue line. So maybe it's a moment to think about the way we are designing now. If this is the approach we should continue designing for the future, or maybe we have to look into the passive strategic cities that have a large background with these temperatures. We look at the passive design in Barcelona to extract design principles. Look how they respond to the climate. The first one is the courtyard, as an urban design strategy that has been used to provide self-shading space to prevent overheatings, so who inhabitants there have a comfortable space. A courtyard, as we can see in different parts of the globe, is a transit space that became a public space to all the one that lives around. The second one is the corridor, which forms a space between indoors and outdoors that helps to reduce the solar radiation into the interiors as they are not directly exposed. At the same time, helps to create a condition where the wind could go through the building, provide an intermediate space for the people to avoid suddenly heavy rain and excessive sunlight. The third strategy is the balcony. It's also a transition space between indoors and outdoors and can provide the opportunity to enjoy the sunshine as well as reduce the incident solar radiation received by the envelope. We design for people, so one of our aims should be to create comfortable spaces, even without having to hotter temperatures in temperate regions at London. It has become a problem, the overheating of the space, creating a new problem, where now it's needed air conditioned in regions where it's not needed, and giving a result in larger expense of energy. Maybe we have to look into examples of other places can offer, like the shutters, which are a common architectural element in tropical and subtropical areas. When they are closed with the interior windows open, are used to block direct sunlight and introduce diffuse radiation, at the same time allowing the wind to come across. But when the shutters are open and the interior windows closed, allows more solar gains indoors and block off chilly wind during cold winters. So I would like to give a question. Are we really understanding or whether we have to learn from the lesson of the principles of the design in the past can offer us?
Hello. As we can see, the historic maximum temperature in Delhi in 2020 has gone till 45 degrees Celsius and is predicted to go till 47 degrees Celsius by 2050. A 2 degrees Celsius change in extreme hot and dry climate, so you can imagine the impact it would have on people. Similarly, we observe a 3.8 degree change in Cairo. Cairo and Delhi need to introspect and learn from their past to be better prepared for the future. we observe some common elements that are present in these cities. The image of today's city is totally different to the way city has evolved since the ancient times. The city is positioned in the delta of Nile River, surrounded by the desert. Its architecture is ready of mass with sharp correlations of sun and shadow. Do you think we forgot how to synthesize architecture today? We see courtyards, which act as traditional spaces which help in stack effect. High thermal mass of walls. Local materials are used for cladding, such as sandstone, which delays heat transfer in the interior spaces and also gives a sense of adaptability. Veranda spaces, which act as shaded walkways, and the extended slab reduces exposure of external walls from direct solar radiation. These traditional buildings can act as a learning from past, where we see use of jalis that limit the solar radiation but creates room for natural light inside the space and also lets in airflow from outside to inside. In case of Delhi, where we see extreme hot and dry climate for most of the year, we see recent construction happening in and around Delhi, which creates a sense of imageability for the city but is in complete disregard for the climate. You see these examples of glass buildings which have high dependence on mechanical and artificial systems. To summarize, we look at the example of India Habitat Center located in New Delhi, designed by architect Joseph Allenstein in 1993, where he looked at India's past and used elements in modern technique to create a project which responds to climate in a comprehensive way. We see controlled use of glass, large windows in building envelope facing towards courtyard to maximize daylight in interior spaces, and smaller windows in outer building envelope to limit solar radiation. We see courtyards with green cover, which creates a microclimate that helps further in regulating the temperature. High thermal mass cladding with the help of local materials such as sandstone and red bricks, which helps in delaying heat transfer. Cross ventilation to provide thermal comfort. Adaptive strategies. Use of sunscreen pergolas, which contain angled panels designed to block the summer sun while letting in the winter sun. It helps in blocking 70% of solar radiation.
And this brings us to the question, what should be our design approach in such an era of climate emergency? From these cases, we understand that all the cities must understand their climate in the future and either look to cities who have already dealt with such conditions or reflect within their own history to find built precedents which make opportunity for adaptability. Architecture needs to prepare itself for a wide range of temperatures in terms of performance and operations within its own vernacular in this era of climate emergency. The design parameters need to allow scope for adaptability and retrofit as and when the impacts of climate change starts becoming evident in our buildings. And we leave with the quote, we learned from the past, we've predicted the future. Let's start designing for it today because there is no planet B. Thank you.
So speculating on potential changes that could be made to the transformation of the city, Dip 10 asks, how can Hackney mitigate climate change?
Consumption emissions represent 73% of London Borough Hackney's emissions. How many percent happens at night? The Mayor of London has launched London's first ever 24-hour London scheme, which aims to promote all forms of cultural, leisure, retail and service activity at night and increase opening hours. In the meantime, the Mayor of London's environmental strategy aims to tackle climate change, mitigation and energy, adapting to climate change and promote low-carbon circular energy. Would 24-hour London increase the energy consumption around Greater London? How is London saving energy while trying to increase nighttime economy at the same time? The very houses of London are built upon refuse. Discarded and forgotten objects, left among old foundations, help to support the weight of the modern city. So that beneath our feet are copper brooches and crucibles, leather shoes and lead tokens, belts and buckles, broken and sandals and figurines, tools and gloves, jars and pieces of bone, shoes and oyster shells, knives and toys, locks and candlesticks, coins and combs. Plates and pipes, a child's ball and a pilgrim's amulet, all spreading their silent ministry through the earth. But the city is built upon remains and ruins in a more literal sense.
Somewhere in your own community, on some street or back alley, this action is probably being duplicated at this moment. Efficient sanitary collection of garbage and refuse is becoming an accepted part of our way of life. Unfortunately, the job doesn't end with efficient collection. These truckloads of accumulated wastes must be disposed of, but where and in what manner is a community problem.
Well, it's not skilled, but it's a job that's got to be done. Someone's got to do it. It is an industry.
In London, food accounts for almost 10% of the city's consumption-based greenhouse gas emissions, due to the kinds of food that is eaten, how and where that food is produced, and the amount of it that is wasted.
Food waste. Hundreds of tons of it here at the largest food collection site in London, and yet this isn't even 1% of what we waste on a daily basis.
After the food waste goes through our process, and it's used as a rich fertiliser for farms in Surrey.
But Paul says he can't understand why more London boroughs don't collect and recycle such valuable material.
The cost of living in the UK is rising and it's changing people's lives.
We either have to eat and be cold or be warm and starve.
And the electric bills, yeah, so if I can put the heating on there.
Spaces, it's places where people can come and gather for free. It's a safe place, it's a warm place, and it's a welcoming place.
Everybody's really welcoming, everybody's really friendly.
You don't need to be a member of the centre, you don't even need to have come into the centre previously. You know, we're open and welcome for everybody to attend.
These new highways will have a far-reaching economic impact on the entire nation.
At an ever-accelerating rate of progress,
We'll be watching you. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight? How dare you?
Tesco. British beef stewing steak. Yeah, it's a copy of The Sun.
So as the video presents, we believe as DIP10 that Hackney needs to tackle all these themes. Thank you.
Perhaps I can ask the DIP10 to ask them why they have such a faith in the past and why solutions from the past are relevant to what you're uncovering in your social and climatic analysis in Hackney.
I think looking at past is important because it has some techniques that maybe we could go back to, I think, in a sense, because technology doesn't always solve everything. So the way everything was handled before is a way to maybe look at and learning from the past, and looking at that is a point that we kind of wanted to draw attention to.
I think perhaps, you talked about the past. Would anyone like to add on to that from your own presentation?
So the reason we approach this presentation today as a lesson from the past is the fact that we already know how to build good buildings. It's not that we're talking about something new. These are all passive principles which have been developed over years and years of experimentation, trial and error by the cavemen, and since the cavemen. And now that with technology we have new precedents to build our buildings, and suddenly we are lost. And we see that in this period when the climate is changing drastically, we're still not trying to make enough effort to go back to history and learn from our past to make sure that the buildings that we design at least make sense to their own climate. And that's what we thought that we should try to highlight here, and that kind of became a starting point today.
I'd like to add just a statement from a series I saw, Chernobyl. I guess everyone has seen it over here. And there's this line from Chernobyl, like, every lie we say incurs a debt to the truth. So not designing a climate responsive building in today's age would be stating a lie, and the price for the lie has to be paid one day. So the threat we see in 2050 from climate changes, we can tackle it very easily from learnings from the past. And that's what we should deliver to now, from now.
And I think to commend your effort to curate such a amazing audio-visual presentation, I would like to go to one anecdote of that, where there's a girl who's commenting on the social structure and the political structure and saying, how could you say that you did? You clearly did not do enough. And that's what we are doing in architecture today, as Karmanya said. So it becomes important that we start making sense of what we say and what we do, and justify ourselves by data and not just intuition.
Okay. Anyone else like to add to that? Before Kieran, I have one other comment. All of the things that we saw in the Dip 10 film and the analysis of what they think the needs are for Hackney to do don't have an answer from the past. And one significant question we have, particularly in a London thing, what they pointed out is that the cycle of demolition and rebuilding continues to the problem. But
Can I add one anecdote to that? There's no one answer. I think that number one, most people are opposed to nuclear power. If we had a sustainable source of energy, we could live in a tent and heat the hell out of it. So everything has a parameter. The other side of things, which is more extreme perhaps, I keep on bringing up my son, but I was explaining to him the move to reuse buildings. And he said, this is exactly how I feel about children. Well, he said there's a lot of children out there that don't have parents. And why are we making more when there's actually plenty that need families? Which is quite alarming, but actually a lot of the problems we have is to do with overpopulation. The problems that were addressed with landscape urbanism, why do we keep buying clothes in places like Primark? Why do we have to keep buying so much stuff? I think everybody in this room has bought things they don't need. We have an argument about reusing buildings or living in a traditional manner, but we don't live in a traditional manner. When I was a student, I never bought anything. I bought socks, but nobody went shopping. Nobody bought new things because things cost money. There was no Primark. There was no H&M. The level of disposable everything is entrenched. So you're changing an entire way of living where, bananas and almond milk and soy products are not feasible. So I think there's also the question, if this is what the stand we take, what are we going to do? Do you commit to not buying new clothing? Do you commit to eating in a way that is locally sourced? Do you commit to only the reuse of existing things? Is that a pledge that you can make? Because I think it's all very well and good to make in the context of the project. But actually what we're talking about here is kind of living the thing that you're talking about. And I think that's a very uncomfortable commitment for a lot of people to make. I'm happy for people to do it. Anyway, I know Kian's...
We have one more. Kieran, and then the last one, and then we're going to take a break till 1 o'clock.
I was going to ask a question. Can I ask a question?
Whatever you like, Kieran.
Okay, I'll be really quick. Hey, thanks. It was really good presentations from both. I'm going to ask a question, and I hope there's still time to answer it. I think you were one group, half of you were talking about their amazing ideas and it already exists, and the other half of you were kind of presenting issues and ideas like that are needed, that are clearly there's a drive for that. So I'm just kind of curious what you guys think about, like, how does this need to be communicated, and and then how does that also then lead to people making change? I don't know if you guys have any answer to that.
I think that it's, both videos they reference sort of more global aspects. And I think an important part is that we can move to do our own sort of way of life to make it a more sustainable way of living. But then also there needs to be a greater collaboration from also governments and bigger companies, that they can then also incorporate a more sustainable way of running their business, of also the effect that they have. So if there's sort of an engineering firm and an architecture firm working together on a large-scale project, are there things that they can do that are sort of already established from past techniques that they can incorporate and say, you know what, we're not going to go for a kind of new flashy technology that is sort of maybe perhaps short term but really is good on the advertisement poster. And also, like with Hackney, in our video we also mentioned kind of London as a whole and the UK as a whole in terms of the waste that we produce. So is there initiatives that the government can do to kind of also help just clean up the way that we live, because there needs to be sort of a collaboration from both ends of the scale?
Yeah, I guess that's a very good question, as in even within the government itself, the two different departments already have conflict or disputes between. As you see, there's one doing nighttime economy, and then the other is promoting a greener London, where the two kind of conflicts each other, and seeing how they work within each other. For example, harnessing energy from at nighttime could do something even more better to the future. Yeah.
And I think here we kind of, because we don't really think about these topics at all. For instance, even when we recycle at home, we put the trash bag in the trash and then we forget about it. I think here we are also trying to kind of identify what we should think about and what we should get maybe educated about. So these are interesting topics that we are faced with every day, but we don't realize that maybe they need to be addressed or to be solved in a way.
And I would just like to quickly add a small anecdote. Okay, sure.
Where is it?
Hi, thank you. Really interesting. So just two quick reflections, one a general one and one about these presentations as well as earlier. One is just push back a little bit on some of the Malthusianism. The endless population growth discourse is questionable. A lot of people make counterclaims that population is declining with income rising. So it's just a general point when we talk about climate change. Maybe it's worth having a more, say, tempered conversation around endless growth of humans, because it's possible that population will decline. That's just one general comment I wanted to sort of throw out there for debate. But then with regards to the presentations, there's a lot of emphasis on the production side and on the consumption side. And there's this kind of throwing back and forth of who's responsible. And I wonder if projects could reflect on the sort of supply chain, sort of production, consumption, supply chain, and very specifically the architecture of that. So, there's the people that make the thing and there's the people that consume the thing. And there's a lot of pressure on people to sort of consume cheaply when it's easy to consume cheaply and sort of enable that process, and it's easy to produce cheaply if people will consume it. But a lot of the kind of sort of drug dealers in this process are the institutions every step of the way, and they have a very specific architecture, literally. So, just to reflect on the earlier presentations, bananas wouldn't happen without Tesco, for example, right? And there's a very specific sort of spatial requirement for a Tesco that allows for a certain sale of banana at a certain price or something like that. So just a general comment to encourage to look at every step of the chain from producer to consumer and the people that enable every step of that process, and to not be afraid to sort of name, blame, and shame institutions and sort of laws or politicians that might be sort of enabling every little point along the two, right? And as a way to sort of get beyond just, is it the production or is it the consumption question, right? It's every little step along the way. Thanks.